Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm going to begin here. There's plenty to get to, millions of things happening, and frankly, not enough time to comment on all of it, let alone bring it to anybody's attention who may not be paying attention. But I'll tell you what, I'll start with this kind of larger topic, which continues to be relevant, I think, and very persistent. And it's exhausting all at the exact same time. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of expand a little bit on a conversation that Jesse James and Outkast had with Frank of the Quite Frankly podcast on Jesse and Outkast's show the other day. It was very well done, a great conversation. And I think, me personally, it not only has to do with podcasting in general and people who have podcasts, but there are endless signs, I think, that can indicate to individuals who to listen to, why to listen to them, and a variety of other reasons. But it boils down to simple brainwashing. And if everybody is saying the same thing all of the time, therein lies the problem. If everybody is believing, more specifically, a lie that has been perpetuated on a great deal of people, and all of these different shows are saying that same lie and buying that same lie, and not reading into it with critical thought, then me personally, and I'm just speaking for myself, then of course that's not a show to listen to. Because again, if they're just believing the mainstream narrative, and they're not even commenting on a particular subject that is obviously in need of serious thought and critical analysis, then again, what does that show have to offer? Again, that's why I enjoy, quite frankly, and I enjoy Jesse and Outkast show, the Dangerous Info podcast, because they do that. Now, there's no doubt, again, that over at Quite Frankly, he spends probably some more time on some subjects than others, just like any other show would. But I can't help, again, but think of the entire Charlie Kirk lie, and this entire, again, psychological operation that's been played on everybody. And yet there are still individuals out there consistently commenting on the fact that they believe that it happened, when it's beyond obvious that it didn't. And again, when I was listening to their conversation, that's exactly what I was thinking of. I was thinking, okay, look at all of these different names of all of these sort of mainstream shows that exist, whether that be for audio purposes or, again, they have a visual show that exists, like a Benny Johnson of the world, for example, or a Patrick Bet-David, or even Candace Owens. And you look at all of these people, and they made their way to Fox News, I don't think by accident. They made their way to Fox News and sort of the mainstream outlets the day that the Charlie Kirk event occurred. And I've spoken about that before, about how I thought that was rather interesting. It seemed remarkably coordinated, almost as if to say, well, we're Fox News and we had Charlie on for a great deal of things and blah, 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 but we've never had these other podcasters, quote unquote, or these other show hosts who have talked with Charlie before. We've never had them on our show, so let's basically join forces. That way, all of their audiences will all of a sudden believe us, because we're all now saying the exact same story at the exact same time. My overall point is, it's still lying. It's still a massive psychological operation for one reason or another. And again, the fraud of TPUSA is coming out more and more. And it's not settling well with people, nor should it. Again, these individuals are false prophets. These people, they preach, they are Zionists by and large. I would go so far as to say they're money launderers. They're taking money from people, promising particular things, and then, of course, what are they delivering? What product are they actually delivering that's worth a damn? And there isn't one. And again, I wrestle with this on a semi-regular basis, because it's the most exhausting part of the world that we live in, is that so many of these people are tied in to one another's shows. Again, like the Benny Johnsons of the world, Patrick Bet-David, I mean, these kinds of people, and yet they're all telling lies, and then they're compounding their lies or at the very least, again, they are incapable of critical thought. And then they, again, run with some particular kind of story, whether it's intentional, that they're intentionally misleading people, or again, they're intentionally lying to people, is basically what I'm trying to say. But then they go off on their own avenues based on a lie. Again, let me take this particular back and forth, which I find completely a total waste of time. That's basically the way I would put it. It's a complete waste of time. You have somebody like Candace Owens, who has a massive show, again, came out of nowhere, black female, articulate, quick, fast talker, like Ben Shapiro, talent agency, the whole thing. Former Democrat, hated whites, and then all of a sudden becomes a conservative and then finds her way onto Capitol Hill, writing books, on stages, so on and so on. None of that is organic. I mean, none of it. Absolutely none of it. And it's certainly not a jealousy thing either. And that was something, again, that Frank and Jesse and Outcast brought up, which I agree with. Any comments that I say here have nothing to do with jealousy. It's quite the opposite. Those people are either not awake, they're lying, or they're in on some kind of an operation that is still deceiving people. I don't think any of those three things are good. I think all three of those things are absolutely horrible. But you have Candace Owens running with, well, I'm saying, this regarding Charlie's death, she'll say. And again, I don't even listen to her show, but I just listen to other people banter about her. And I find it fascinating because I'm saying, wait a minute, she's still misleading people. She's telling people that Charlie Kirk is dead when clearly he's not. Again, they ran with the magic bullet theory from a 30-06. I don't think so. Completely staged, completely fake. Don't want to get into that part of it again. It's just too flippin' obvious. I'm just shocked at the number of people that are refusing to bring it up. And then they run with their own version of their own stories. Like, again, a death threat out for Candace because of whatever. She went down the Macron rabbit hole regarding his husband, who's clearly a dude. And, all of this other stuff. And then, again, you have people at Patrick Bet-David's show questioning her and all of this useless back and forth. It's just a complete waste of time. But me commenting on the absurdity of all of those shows, I don't think is a waste of time at all, because I don't think that they are our friends by any stretch of the imagination. That the amount of money that a person makes behind a podcast, or the number of clicks, or the number of likes or shares, or Substack restacks, or comments, or whatever else, none of that equates to the truth. And if all of those people have all of those shows with all of that money and all of that influence and whatever else, I'm shocked that people continue to listen to them simply because what makes them any different than the mainstream media? I'm trying to find a difference. Yeah, there are subjects that they bring up that are a little bit different than the mainstream. But even so, they're not true. They're lies. It's one misconception after another. And it's exhausting. So again, I liked the discussion with Jesse and Outcast and Frank, because they're right. The constant deception is exhausting. It's everywhere. But people have to understand that in this giant field of so-called podcasting, there are very few that actually get down to the crux of the matter. I mean, a person, again, I'm not here to tell anybody how to spend their time. And again, you don't certainly have to listen to this show. You're free to do whatever you'd like. But I see some of these podcasts and I just say to myself, my God. I mean, in this field alone, there are endless psychological operations taking place, and you can just always tell by what they refuse to bring up. They, again, are in the same ballpark as the mainstream because they're doing the same thing that they do. They're trying to stomp out individualized thought. They're trying to stomp out critical thought. They're trying to keep people brainwashed. And if they're perpetuating a lie that they themselves either, again, know for a fact is a lie, or they're too stupid to figure it out, and they don't want to spend the time figuring it out, then they're no different than the mainstream. They still have shackles around people's brains trying to do the thinking for them while they open up their wallets for them. It blows me away. I don't understand it, other than the fact that it proves that brainwashing is very real, and that these psychological operations are happening all of the time with such a frequency that it's hard to keep track. Again, I'll throw another one out there very quickly. Take, for example, the shooting that took place in Washington, D.C. regarding the National Guardsmen. I don't know if it happened or it didn't. I'm leaning toward it happened, but again, you would think with all the security footage and all the cell phones and, all of the witnesses and so on, there'd be a little more information available. I understand it's happening again with guardsmen and all of that. But frankly, I'm inclined, I think, to reserve judgment on any of it. And I'll simply say this: if this woman's passing, who was a National Guardsman, took place, then that's awful. If she was ambushed again by whatever, a Muslim with a gun, then that's terrible. Of course, the same goes for the male who was apparently shot as well. All of that again, it's awful if it really happened. I wasn't there, I don't know, I haven't seen any footage of it actually happening. You just have the media, of course, bringing up stories about it, and then the president speaking about it, and that's it. Again, what makes that any different than anything else? That's the difference between me, for example, and, a Patrick Bet-David who's out there with all his homies doing whatever they're doing and not critically analyzing anything and again, falling for basically everything at face value. Or again, like I've said, they're in on the lie, which is awful. Because deception is not our way out of anything. Now, again, with all of that said, in that particular incident, rather, I find it interesting, too, that almost regardless of whether it was real or it was staged to some extent, that the result is almost pre-planned and designed to be the same, which is an immediate stop to anything having to do with immigrants or migrants, quote unquote. Let's just call them invaders because that's what they are. Invaders from foreign countries, i.e. third world or whatever other countries. Of course, everybody's saying, well, they're brown countries and they're just countries filled with brown people. Well, so what? It doesn't matter. There are white people who live in these countries as well. But if these individuals don't like America, then stay home and fix your own country. But again, the result, whether, again, it was a psychological operation in one direction or another, the result is the same, which is it motivated an action. It motivated a presidential action, which is lawful. There was, however, one inconsistency that I picked up on, and it's slight, but it does exist. Fox News claimed on their X account that the woman who was shot, the female National Guardsman, that she swore her oath, basically took her oath to serve the day before she was shot. And that's not true. Or is it? Because when the president was speaking about her, he said that she enlisted in 2023. So which is it? Because when you enlist in the National Guard, you take the oath then and there and only then and there, and you serve 6 years. Upwards of 8 in some instances, but you serve 6. So why would she take 2 oaths? The fact is she wouldn't. And anybody can look this up. You can either ask an AI system or you can just look it up on your own. And again, any search engine will certainly handle the question. How many oaths does a National Guardsman take? And it clearly states you take 1. You're sworn in a ceremony, and then you take the oath either right then and there or shortly after. And not like days, weeks, months. I mean, it's like within the day or within the next day. So if she enlisted in 2023, why was she taking an oath the day before she was shot? Unless, of course, that's the emotional story that Fox News wants to run with, because it makes it sound like she instantly joined up and was instantly killed. Again, I'm not saying it happened or it didn't happen. I don't know. I'm just saying that I caught that one inconsistency. And I believe it was through a Gateway Pundit article where they had basically both clips contradicting one another. Fox News making their statement and then the president speaking about it. So which is it? It just seems odd to me. It seems like something that would not be inaccurate. It seems like something, that's certainly something that anybody could easily verify and look up immediately for accuracy. But I don't know. Maybe they're both wrong. I mean, who's to say? I don't have her paperwork in front of me, so there's no real way I can find that out. I don't know the family, so I can't contact them. But who do you believe? The president, or do you believe Fox News? Or are they both in on it? I have no idea. I'm just saying that, again, these inconsistencies are right in front of our chops. It's just right in front of our face. In fact, just as a side note regarding, again, all of these deceptions and everything else, and it really is a head scratcher and it bothers me, and it should bother a lot of people. But this is normally the time of year where I'll actually kind of relax a little bit, and I find myself watching some sporting events and some of the ridiculous commercials that are on, and I certainly did it over Thanksgiving break, watch college football. Again, I always watch the Buckeyes-Michigan game and root for the Buckeyes clearly. Can't stand Michigan, but either way, you watch these games and you can see, again, the inconsistency. You can see the fraud. You can catch it at face value. And frankly, it's all over the place. And I'm surprised, again, that more people aren't picking up on this, let alone commenting on it. There are some X accounts that call out the blatant fraud in sport and how, again, a great deal of it is certainly fixed, or at the very least, certain people are manipulated to make a score a particular way or keep a score at a particular whatever, a particular difference between two teams. And that just seems, again, highly, highly unlikely. I'll give you a couple of examples from the OSU game. Certainly, I think one. There was a point in the game where the headsets of all of the Buckeyes coaches stopped working. And everybody was like, well, it's just an accident. I mean, I understand the rivalry and I fully get it. I've lived in Ohio long enough to understand sort of the seriousness, quote unquote, of the emphasis that people put on that game, and that sabotage is certainly not out of the ordinary. But again, the announcers were like, well, anyway, back to the game. I'm sure they'll get it figured out. And then eventually they all got different headsets on the OSU side of the field. And then I thought, well, who's listening in? Again, that's where my head goes. I'm not so much wrapped up in it emotionally like, gee, I'm going to be sad if this team wins or loses. I mean, frankly, I could care less. But at the exact same time, I'm always looking for the fraud in these games because to me, it's blatant. Let me give you another example. It wasn't OSU. This actually happened on Monday Night Football. This past Monday night. I believe it was the Giants and the Patriots. Again, I don't watch Monday Night Football. I don't typically watch NFL games in their entirety. I might catch a little from time to time this time of year, but that's about it. I was actually watching the game, and there was a moment when the Giants kicker, he looked like he was Asian. I'm just trying to paint a picture. I don't know his name or anything. Never seen him play, don't care. But he goes to kick a field goal. It wasn't an extra point. It was a 3-point field goal. And it would have, I don't think, tied the game, but the score would have been far closer and within reach. And he kicks the ground. And he never even hits the ball. He kicks the ground with his kicking foot. He's right-footed. And he kicks the ground behind the football. The football doesn't even move. He misses the ball completely. And when you watch him kicking the football, his eyes are looking at the goalpost. He's not even looking at the ball. Now, again, when I see that, I'm thinking to myself a variety of things. Number one, my mind goes to, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And then I instantly start listening to the announcers to pick up on what they say regarding it. And again, I understand people would say this is inconsequential and it doesn't matter. I'm simply highlighting, again, the fraud in sport. So what happened next was I thought, hilarious. Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, of course, are calling the game. And Troy Aikman, Hall of Fame quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, he openly says, I've never seen that before. And then he laughs. And Joe Buck makes a comment or two and then laughs, and then it's on to the next play. But he openly said, I've never seen that before. So you're talking about a guy who's been playing football since the 80s and 90s. Here it is, 2025. And he says he's never seen that before. A kicker kick the ground, completely miss a football as an NFL kicker. So you know he's making millions. In the professional, whatever it is, sports entertainment business, quote unquote, it's like professional wrestling, legally speaking. But he misses the football completely by sticking his foot into the ground behind the football. And everybody's like, well, never seen that before. That was embarrassing. On to the next play. And I'm going, wait a minute. No one does that accidentally. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't a whoopsie from a professional kicker in the NFL. That was intentional. Why in God's name would he miss that field goal unless he's in on it? And he's got to keep the score a particular way, or someone told him to miss a field goal or whatever, and he decided to miss it that way. Again, this is the exhausting part of the constant lying, and it's not even that I'm not reaching. I don't think that I'm. Again, anybody can go back and watch that clip for yourself. It happened. I mean, it actually happened. But I'm watching it, and I'm just thinking to myself, my God, where is there not fraud? Because it's flipping everywhere. It's all over the place. And I'll tell you something. I mean, this is one of the things that drove Friedrich Nietzsche crazy. It was this kind of stuff. It wasn't, football kickers intentionally missing kicks, but it was his acknowledgement of corruption and fraud and how people are just crazy and they're fine with it. And they don't even know that they're crazy in many cases, which is really disturbing. They don't know they're being lied to. They don't know they're being deceived. And if they found out, would they even care? Or would the Matrix just grab onto them and keep them right where they are because, well, that's the way that it is? Let me go back to the OSU game real quick. There were, again, a number of calls that were interesting. Of course, in that game, they typically let them play. And by let them play, that means that they let certain penalties go, or they'll call unsportsmanlike conduct or personal fouls on both sides. That way, the penalties offset, no harm, no foul. But if we call it on you two again, then you get thrown out of the game or whatever. There were a couple of moments in the game where I thought, well, this is interesting because there could be some penalties that could be called, or there could be some serious calls here that were made originally that could be called back. One of their wide receivers caught a ball, ran it into the end zone, and the ball was kind of moving around a little bit in his hands, but he had it up against his chest, but it was moving around a little bit when he crossed the goal line and then stepped out of bounds and then whatever. And then all the announcers and everybody watching was like, oh my God, it could be a touchback. That means it won't be a touchdown, and Michigan will have the ball on the 20-yard line or the 25-yard line or whatever. Again, never in the history of football has a call like that ever been called back or called a touchback when clearly he had the ball, clearly he was over the line. Yeah, the ball was moving a little bit in his possession, but it was still in his possession, so who cares? And fortunately for them, it didn't get called back. It remained a touchdown. Because again, they ruled it a touchdown, and you would have to have whatever excuse they come up with. A bunch of evidence to basically say that it's not a touchdown. Again, it was like they were reaching for a reason to not give them a score. Now, on the other side of the issue, you had this happen during the game, which I saw it. Again, I'm awake, so I see these things, and I see the inconsistency. You had OSU's mascot, Brutus the Buckeye, and he's out there, and during one of the commercial breaks, he gets in the end zone, and one of the Michigan end zones, of course, they both say Michigan on them by and large, but he X's out in the snow the letter M in the Michigan name and the Michigan logo, and then he does the script Ohio with his feet in the end zone right next to the M. It was hilarious, and no one actually saw it live necessarily because it was during a commercial break, but I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. That's also probably unsportsmanlike conduct on the entire side of OSU, which would be a 15-yard penalty. And then Brutus would probably get kicked out of the game because it's basically like a fan doing it. Again, a cheerleader wouldn't do that, would they? Would a cheerleader get in the end zone, X out the M, write script Ohio, and then go back on the sidelines to then only have a couple of Michigan grounds crew guys get out there and mess it up with their hands and whatever else. And it remained that way for some time, the Xing out of the M. Again, it's meaningless in the grand scheme of things. I fully understand. I'm simply saying that the inconsistency is beyond strange because there have been moments where mascots have actually received a penalty during a football game for doing particular things on the sideline that are apparently uncouth. It's just odd to me. I don't know. Again, somebody would say I'm looking too much into it or I'm crazy. I don't think so at all. I just think that I can see through it and I can see the inconsistency. Certainly, again, if you've paid attention to something long enough and then you step away from it and then you get back in it, you can see how odd it looks. Let me give you one more example. Even Donald Trump commented on it, and he commented on a particular game I think that happened last week or whatever it was, the week before last. It could have been last week. It was, again, a game involving the Giants, and it was tied, and they could have kicked a field goal in overtime to put them up 3 points, but they didn't. They went for 7 points, and they didn't get it. They were on the goal line. And even Donald Trump made a truth post about it. He goes, why would they do that? Why would you go for 3 points? Or why wouldn't you go for 3 points and attempt to win the game by 3 points? Or at the very least, extend overtime. But you take the whatever you would call it, the more risky play, basically. The play that has the higher chance of not succeeding. And then, you end up failing, thereby giving the other team a higher chance of winning the game. It was almost as if he himself was calling out the fraud to people and saying it doesn't make any sense. Why would you do this? Again, some people were looking into his particular post and they were saying, this is the president of the United States telling everybody that this game is fixed and that games like this are fixed. Again, I know I've been over it before, and I've played clips and made references to particular books about all of this, but it's just, again, it's very, very interesting. It's one of those things where there's so much money wrapped up in all of this, and there's so much, again, blind allegiance to sports ball that it would be difficult for somebody to pick up on the fraud if they're too wrapped up in it. And, of course, it's designed to keep people distracted, even while watching the game. Because then it's a commercial break, or then it's on to the next play, or, well, don't worry about that. There's always the next play. And then you're just supposed to, again, just believe the lie and tolerate the lie when it's right in front of you. I think that's my overall point for this first portion of the show here, is that how much more of this can we possibly take? For those of us, again, who are awake, yes, we turn it off and, we don't pay attention to it. I just find it fascinating, the number of people that listen to these particular shows, or again, whether they be podcasts or video shows or sporting events or anything on the old TV. I mean, my God, have you seen the number of streaming services that exist? And they still have sitcoms. This is still a thing. People watch this shit. I mean, they tune into CBS on a Tuesday night and wrap their arms around whatever the hell show. Watson, starring a black man. I mean, what? I didn't know Professor Watson was a black guy. I mean, what's going on? What is it with all this? I find myself too. It's kind of funny because I say it out loud all the time. Anytime I'm around family, or again, TV is on and all of these shows pop up, I simply say the same thing every time, and I say it out loud. I say, who has the time to watch all this shit? Who has the time? What a waste of time. I need to watch the show Doc. It's about a female doctor who had amnesia, and then she had to relearn how to become a doctor. It's the #1 doctor drama on television, so a particular station says. Who watches that? Do people really watch it? Or is that too just fake? That they're trying to trick people into thinking that people watch it when in fact no one watches it. Because it seems so stupid to me that anybody would literally tune in or set their DVRs to catch the next season of Watson. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But it is in full force. You watch any of these events on TV for any length of time, and holy hell, you are inundated with everything. And it's exhausting. And it's not good. None of it's good. You're not seeing a positive commercial for anything. It's all preying on emotion, or it's trying to make you feel guilty, or normalizing, I don't know, race destruction with all the mixed race couples and everything else. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's too much. It's too much. So I'm going to end the rant there. Again, it's that time of season. And as my mom likes to say, and she's right, and it's hilarious, it's red bow on car season, isn't it? All the flippin' commercials with red bows on cars. That if you're not buying somebody a car for Christmas, then you're a fat loser. I mean, what the hell? What the hell? Don't forget to buy all your family members a Lexus. And a Lexus with a huge red bow on it parked outside on a snowy day, because, that's what everybody does during Christmas, is everybody just buys each other a flippin' Lexus. Give me a break. It's just constant in your face, and people get paid to create this stuff. It is exhausting. You got to turn it off, though. I mean, I couldn't do it. After so long, it's just like, Jesus, I need to, I don't know, find a hole and read a book. Now, again, it's the truth I've always found to be far more interesting anyway, rather than all of these negative psychological operations. But with that said, and shifting gears here, more geopolitical things, very predictably, of course, you have James Comey and Letitia James apparently going to be brought up on other charges and other indictments, or indicted with other criminal charges, so to speak. Again, that's not surprising. They immediately, of course, took to the microphone and social media basically saying, well, we've been exonerated, we've never done anything wrong, and blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows that's not true. It's beyond obvious that they're criminals among endless others, and yeah, they should do time. Of course, Comey engaged in treason and sedition, if not Letitia James herself, so hell, hang him as far as I'm concerned. But apparently that's coming down the pipeline as well. You also have this. You had Kash Patel the other day openly stating that the FBI has quote-unquote found a bunch of burn bags with evidence in it, implicating a bunch of different people, specifically having to do with the Russia hoax, of course. And again, this is one of the things I think that slips a lot of people's minds. And it's a decent question to ask. And I asked it, of course, regarding one of these AI systems, which I use from time to time, which is X's AI system, Grok. But I got on and I basically said, okay, I remember the president signing an executive order to, of course, declassify everything having to do with the Russia hoax. So it begs numerous questions, I think. One is, does the executive order mean that no one is going to be held accountable criminally? Because if information is declassified and released to the public for them to see, is that being done to bypass the DOJ in a way to hold them criminally accountable without the DOJ being able to hide the information? Seems like a valid question to me. And then, of course, because of the executive order, doesn't that also mean that that would speed up the process, legally speaking, to hold these people accountable? There's also this. Does that mean that they've already caught them and that they already have copies of all of the evidence? And therefore, what's being disclosed to the public is happening essentially after the fact, when they already have the indictments already written up. They just haven't been, the indictments themselves haven't been released to the public for the public to see what's really going on. So I simply ask the question, if the FBI has evidence of illegality and treason at the highest levels of government in the form of emails and paperwork, when can you legally release it to the public? And here's what it said. It said the FBI cannot unilaterally release to the public, quote unquote, raw investigative evidence like emails, paperwork, etc., alleging illegality or treason at the highest levels of government, no matter how compelling the evidence is. Doing so outside strictly defined legal processes would itself be illegal and would almost certainly destroy the case being built. It says, here's when and how such material can legally become public. Number one, through normal criminal prosecution, which is the most common path. Unfortunately, that's the path that has the most corruption. Number two, congressional oversight. This, of course, has plenty of corruption with it as well, but this is one of the ways that information like this can come to light also. Number three, special counsel or inspector general's reports. Again, you're talking about Durham, John Huber potentially, along with any other individuals, again, wrapped up in the inspector general's office. The declassification by the president, which is number four, which again was done through executive order. And then number five, court-ordered releases. So again, it's not like the FBI is going, well, we are releasing this just because we decide to. They're legally allowed to do it. The only question that I'm asking is whether or not it's being done not just to show the public, quote-unquote, transparency, hate that word, but for the sake of this, to basically create transparency for the entire process by, again, showing everybody who was involved, and then, of course, that creates more panic, and then the moths run right to the flame again, and then they get caught again, and then all of that happens. Or is it being done not only for that, but is it being done because they've already caught them? I tend to think it's the latter. I think they've already caught all of these people. I think they, of course, have everything. The president's openly said that they have everything, that they caught them all. And it's not just the Russia hoax, of course. It's voter fraud, and it's a number of things. But I think, again, when this information is being released to us, the public, it's not that it's going to get buried in the court of public opinion and that, we the people become judge, jury, executioner, so to speak. It's just being done for the public in order to, again, keep it in the mainstream sort of zeitgeist, I guess, and the general conversation, and remind people about what's been going on. But at the same time, because on the back end, there's going to be a prosecution. And again, a lot of people are theorizing right now online that again is coming sooner rather than later. There are some Q posts indicating it specifically right now. There's a particular delta from today, December 2nd, having to do again with the U.S. subsection and the U.S. code having to do with treason, sedition, and conspiracy to commit both, along with, of course, violent acts and what those senators were threatening by, of course, telling military individuals to, ignore particular orders and XYZ. So, who's to say? But I do think, again, in my in my own opinion, I think that the latter option is far more likely. That this has to be done by the book. And that, again, by releasing this to the public, you're forcing the media to bring it up. And you're forcing, again, a spotlight on these particular people and their crimes to keep it basically in the loop and keep it on the regular in the so-called news. So that's my 2 cents. But again, we'll have to wait and see because we're still waiting for someone to be hung. And that has to happen eventually. Now, let me move on to education here, and I've got a few things that are, I think, rather important, both nationally and statewide. In fact, before I do that, let me mention this. This is kind of tied to it. If there's any gun owners out there like myself, then gun laws are important and they matter. And staying up to date with what those laws are in any new legislation that passes or Supreme Court decisions that come down or even state decisions. All of this is remarkably important for gun owners to know. Unfortunately, again, in this world that we live in the constant deception, there was a YouTube channel that popped up in my feed the other day, and it's called Survival Firearms. Now, anybody can look up this channel on YouTube if you'd like, but a video came up, and it had to do with gun laws that have changed now nationwide at the federal level for the better, and it runs down through at least 10 laws, so they say. The dead giveaway that this channel in this particular video was complete horseshit was the fact that they made no references to actual law. There were no citations of any kind. There was nothing but an AI-generated voice on top of stock footage of lawyers and guns and people shooting and legal paperwork and documents and the whole thing. But there was actually, there was nothing in the comment section with a link describing any of these. And yeah, it's complete fraud. This is one of the things, again, that people have to watch out for because someone would watch that video without thinking and they would blindly believe it. And then they'll find themselves in serious legal trouble because they'll be doing the very thing that the video says is legal when in fact it isn't. Let me give you an example. It basically said, one of the many examples, I think, was that it openly said that anybody who has a concealed carry permit now can openly travel to every state, regardless of that state's laws, when it comes to firearms and how to store them and XYZ. As long as you have a concealed carry permit in whatever state that you live in, and that has reciprocity among 48 of the 50 states. That was one of the things that they said that the Supreme Court, quote unquote, recently decided. It's completely untrue. It's 100% false. Again, it's one of the reasons why you can use these AI systems, and I don't want to say the term fact check, because that's dumb. What you're doing is you're verifying. You're looking for something that is easily verifiable. Again, when it comes to real history and real science and things of that nature, and of course all of the lies that we've been told in school, using these AI systems is not the most reliable tool, and it never will be. But when it comes to something that's easily verifiable like law, and gun law more specifically, and or federal gun law specified to a specific month in a particular year, because this video kept saying, the Supreme Court in November of 2025 said, and I went, that's funny, I didn't hear about that at all. The month came and went, and I didn't hear anything about gun laws. So I looked it up, and it goes through almost every state that has passed any kind of a gun law, again, in their state in the year of 2025, and it tells you exactly what it is. And whether or not, again, it is for a so-called safety measure, is it pro-gun or is it anti-gun? And it breaks it down that way. And then again, if there's any federal law that comes down the pike, well, then it highlights that as well. Point being, don't trust these AI-generated YouTube channels because they're popping up all over the place. They are constant. And they're feeding people all kinds of things that are 100% not true. So just wanted to throw that out there kind of as a little public service announcement. But yeah, again, I watched the video and I thought this is too good to be true. It's too good to be true. And sure enough, yeah, it was fake. Now, I suspected it was fake. And then, of course, you get into the comments section of this particular video on the Survival Firearms YouTube channel. And I made a comment there basically saying the whole thing is fake. Here's a direct link to an AI system that runs through the actual laws themselves that were passed in 2025, and the whole thing is fake. And then you scroll down, and some people are believing it, and they're believing the channel. And then you scroll down, and then somebody else is like, this entire channel is 100% AI generated. None of these laws are actual laws. So again, you can find the truth sometimes in the comment section, but for the people who just believe it at face value, they're putting themselves in serious legal danger when it comes to, again, storing a firearm, transferring a firearm from point A to point B, carrying a firearm, whatever it may be. So just wanted to throw that out there, again, as a bit of a warning. Okay, education. Let me start with this little quote from Linda McMahon, because I said this a long time ago, and it's far worse than even this. Again, no disrespect to Linda McMahon. I'm sure she's doing a fine job. I have no reason to believe otherwise. She said the following here over on Truth. She included a meme, basically, of a particular quote. I think she's quoting herself, and she says the following: returning education to the states does not mean the end of federal support for education. It simply means the end of a centralized bureaucracy micromanaging what should be state-led responsibility, unquote. She's not wrong. But as I've said before, the issue is the state and then local authority. And that is the problem, because that is as corrupt as anything that was going on at the federal level. Again, birds of a feather flock together, and these are leaves on the same tree. So it doesn't mean that corruption is going to go away. I've contested here on the show it's going to double down, and it's going to get worse at the state level and certainly at the local level, because now they're jockeying for power and they're jockeying for influence, and the NGOs are bypassing the federal government and they're going right to the source now. So again, this is going to get worse. The system already, again, is the largest running psychological operation that's existed outside of, again, war, taxation, and a few others. And people still blindly believe in it, even when the system itself has lied to everybody and misled everybody and chewed them up and spit them out with zero due process and very little recourse. And if people think that's going to get better with time, I don't think it is. Again, I think that leaving these government systems of so-called education, and it isn't education by any stretch of the imagination, but leaving these systems is the only way out. It's the only way to free the mind, is to never enslave it in the first place. So there's that. There's also this couple stories here from Campus Reform. This has to do with Northwestern University, and they're going to pay the Treasury Department, as a result of penalties apparently, $75 million to settle a Title VI investigation. It says, quote, "You do not accept a $75 million federal penalty and multi-year oversight regime unless there were serious failures." Again, I'm going to read a little bit from this, not the whole thing, but this has to do with this agreement apparently coming after, of course, the president froze $790 million in federal research to Northwestern University to hold the university accountable for its alleged violation of Title VI. It said on November 28th, Northwestern University reached an agreement with the Trump administration which would require the school to pay the U.S. Treasury $75 million, uphold a commitment to protecting Jewish students. How about you just protect everybody? Adhere to Title VI by protecting men from women's spaces, and terminate its previous agreement to fund a set of Palestinian faculty and student positions. This agreement comes after President Trump froze $790 million in federal research to the university and hold the university accountable for alleged Title VI violations. In his public statement, Northwestern President Henry Binen, however you say his name, said that the agreement was not entered into lightly. He referred to the process of being examined by the federal government for the Title VI Title VI violations, as grueling and a difficult stretch. Well, yeah. I mean, it's Big Brother, and they asked you to do something and you didn't do it because you're a gay university that does a lot of gay stuff, and they're telling you not to, and now you got to come up with a boatload of cash that you probably don't even have. So that's a tough one. This wraps up here, and it says, though the resolution agreement for Northwestern doesn't name a formal federal monitor like Columbia University's agreement does, its architecture amounts to the same thing. The university is now locked into mandatory reporting, documentation, corrective action duties, and rolling review by ED, DOJ, and HHS. Campus Reform has reached out to Northwestern University for comment, and this article will be updated accordingly, unquote. Yeah. Again, the same thing can happen with K-12 schools when they are found to be remarkably negligent and not adhering to the law. Is the state comes down on top of them and overtakes them and says, well, now we're going to get lawyers involved because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And now you're going to have to do more paperwork, and you're going to have to report more to us about what you're doing and not doing. And that's going to create more work for you. But again, they're communists. And these certainly, higher ed institutions are all CIA linked. And again, they're communistic by nature, by and large. They do the same things. They have the same programs. They hire the same kinds of people. There's no diversity. Their definition of diversity is getting rid of white people. It's stomping down on, in-state tuition, basically, and keeping people who, again, are fully qualified, who live within the state, from even attending these institutions if they want to. So it's disgusting, but I can't believe that, again, in this day and age, people throw their money at it. It just blows me away. Here was another one again from Campus Reform. How Michigan State University's mandated DEI course trains future teachers in conformity. And then this is their analysis of that. Again, this shouldn't surprise anybody. This was from just under a month ago. But it said a required textbook for the course says to, quote, save education is to, quote, find new ways to resist, new ways to agitate, new ways to maintain order and safety that abolishes prisons, U.S. immigration, and customs enforcement. It says 3/4 of Michigan kids can't read at grade level. Michigan State Senator Eric Nesbitt told Campus Reform, the next generation of teachers need to be focused on teaching the ABCs, not DEI. It's too late. It's too late. Because you already have 2 generations now who don't know the ABCs, and at least one of those generations are, quote unquote, becoming the new teachers in America. Which means not only do you have an indoctrination camp from the past, but you have an inescapable one that exists now. Again, it's overwhelming, but this is the problem. And it was, again, even brought up by the nitwit superintendent in the town where I live. Same thing. He said it. He openly admitted it. He said the well's dry. He didn't use my terminology. That's what I say. But he verified it. They're having a hard time finding new young teachers because colleges are graduating less and less educators. Why is that? The fact that no one addresses that is seriously the problem. And again, it was one of the things that I would bring up when I was interviewing for higher ed positions. I brought that up in the interviews consistently with every institution I interviewed with. Same thing. So what is it that you bring to the table? What is it that you blah, 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 blah. What makes you unique? And I went, I'm interested in the teacher turnover rate. And I'm saying it firmly like that because I knew why. I knew why it existed. I was way past the hypothesis stage. I had a full-blown flippant conclusion. I knew exactly why and all the reasons why. Think they're interested in that? No. they're not they're not interested in solving the problem. They're interested in maintaining the problem. And they think, again, that maintaining the problem is going to be beneficial to them as institutions and or people who work within the institution. These people are on drugs. It's not how you run a business. You have to examine what the problem is, you fix it, and you never return to said problem. But not these people. This should prove to everybody that it's controlled by the CIA, that it's controlled by three-letter agencies to be this bad. And it's really being done, frankly, to overthrow our country and overthrow governments and certainly brainwash our civilization. It's been rather successful, I think. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. I mean, the brainwashed would disagree with it, but that's because they're still in the system. Let me go through some of this article. Again, it's a long one. I don't want to hit on every single point, but there's a lot here. It says, in the school's elementary, again, we're talking about Michigan State University, which, by the way, if memory serves, there was some dummy who used to teach here at Miami University in the town where I live in their education department, and he ended up going up to Michigan, and he was insane. He was a black dude from South Carolina, and he was, again, full DEI to the bone, 100% communist, and apparently found a home at Michigan State. Well, look what he's done to that place. And I assume he's still there, although he may not be, but who's to say? It says, in the school's elementary and secondary education programs at Michigan State University, every student must take the, quote, social foundations of justice and equity in education, unquote. Sounds like a waste of time. Apparently, the Young Americans Foundation obtained the syllabi for the required course, and it is built entirely around one textbook. Oh, this will be good. It says at the top of the syllabus, or syllabi, in large bold print, is the word required, quote unquote. What follows is a declaration. Quote, there is one required book for this class. It is titled, We Want to Do More Than Survive. Subtitle, Abolitionist Teaching in the Pursuit of Educational Freedom by a Bettina Love. That's a hard no on that book. It goes on, it says, why do teachers need to approach diverse students differently than white students? Apparently that's what it's about. Not shocking. Why does the course assign only one textbook without exposing students to competing perspectives? Take a look at what's inside this textbook. Here's a few quotes among others. It says, it instructs students that the way to save education is through abolitionist teaching, the goal of which is to find new ways to discuss inequality and distribute wealth and resources, new ways to resist, new ways to agitate, new ways to maintain order and safety, and abolishes prisons, U.S. immigration, and customs enforcement. How should students go about engaging in so-called abolitionist teaching? Well, it starts with freedom dreaming. Yes, you heard that correctly. Freedom dreaming. Whatever that is. Dreams grounded in a critique of injustice. It says these dreams are not whimsical, unattainable daydreams. They are critical and imaginative dreams of collective resistance. No, it's just Marxist gobbledygook that no one gives a damn about. That's all it is. No wonder, again, that no one can read and write at the elementary level of education. No wonder. No wonder they are literally being retarded and becoming retarded when it comes to their ability to comprehend and think, because the people doing the instructing are being taught this crap. It says Michigan's future pre-K through 3 teachers are being taught the way to teach students is to dream. The elementary education quote-unquote program, for example, targets students pursuing a Michigan elementary teaching certificate for either pre-K, grades pre-K through 3, or grades 3 through 6. Future educators are also being taught not to hold students accountable to academic metrics. Love's teaching manifesto declares that accountability is a word used in the field of education to scare educators into spirit-murdering dark children, unquote. Well, here's what I can tell you. without even reading the rest of this, which I don't think I have to, because then it just kind of gets into a back and forth with campus reform. If anybody attends Michigan State University and graduates with a teaching degree from there, let alone a license, you're not going to get hired. And if you do, you're going to get hired into a Marxist brainwashing camp, which means you're probably right at home. But if anybody even cares about the truth in the so-called education business, one of these weirdos shows up, even references this book or any of the language in it in an actual interview, good luck. They don't stand a chance. Again, it sounds like this is an Office of Civil Rights complaint. It doesn't sound like Michigan State, let alone their education department, is adhering to the no more DEI stuff that's supposed to, of course, not exist anymore. It goes on here. I'll finish with this. It says DEI-based courses include teaching of science to diverse learners, teaching of social studies to diverse learners, teaching literacy to diverse learners 1 and 2. Good Lord, there's 2 courses on that. Teaching mathematics to diverse learners 1 and 2, as well as internship in teaching diverse learners in additional endorsement areas and social foundations of justice and equity in education. Boring. And it's nothing. Again, they are not being taught anything about educational law. They're not being taught about the job. They're not being taught about the working environment, the corruption that exists, the brainwashing. None of them are being told to read Inside American Education by Dr. Thomas Sowell. They're not being taught any of that. That's one of the reasons why, one of many, as to why the teacher turnover rate is as high as it is, and it's worse than it used to be, and it was always bad. They get into this business believing they can just dream and behave and do whatever they want, and then they get fired. Hell, you had a local female school teacher in the district where I live who was allowing children, black students, quote unquote, to possess drugs in her classroom, allegedly. And what did they do to her? Did they take her teaching license? No. Did they file a complaint with the state? I don't know if they did or they didn't. I certainly did because I had the evidence. And then what did they let her do? They let her stay in her position for the remainder of the year, no longer in her formal classroom, and then they let her quietly resign. You fire these people. That's what you do, and then you get rid of them permanently. Such actions like that, of course, clearly define poor leadership at the top, all the way down. But at the bottom level, that, of course, is what these universities are producing. It's producing male and female students that are making excuses for illegality and even covering it up. Because to hold them accountable means you're not being diverse, equitable, or inclusive. Because Tyrone decides to bring a bag of dope to school and his teacher allows him to hide it, let alone walk around school smelling like weed. Now, speaking of asinine decisions and poor leadership, and I've spoken about this individual before, this person's lack of actual policy, and again, he's a dollar store Obama, as far as I'm concerned, of the Indian variety. I'm not a fan of Vivek Ramaswamy. If any of us have done, or did, rather, even a fraction of what he did regarding the pharmaceutical industry and the stock market and the fraud associated with his so-called Alzheimer's drug in partnership with his own mother, we would be in jail for fraud, embezzlement, racketeering, money laundering, whatever. You can pick a crime. The fact that he is the front runner to win the gubernatorial race in Ohio here next year is astounding to me. That of all the real Ohioans that exist, this guy is the leader. And his opponent, or then primary opponent, I should say, Dave Yost, is the current Attorney General of Ohio. But apparently, again, since the Republican, whatever the hell, party of Ohio endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy, Dave Yost dipped out. And the Democrats have aligned themselves with an Amy Acton. And Amy Acton is the former health director for Mike DeWine, the current governor. So let's go back in time to 2020. Amy Acton was in charge of all of the health, quote unquote, related decisions in Ohio that everybody blindly followed, certainly the corporations, the educational institutions, quote unquote, everything else. And the amount of blood that is on her hands as a result of the entire bioweapon shot rollout is overwhelming and incalculable. And that's the Democrats' pick for governor of Ohio. That's number one. And it's beyond asinine to me that she would even be their only choice. The same, however, is true with the so-called Republicans and Vivek Ramaswamy. Why on earth anybody is endorsing this fraud is beyond me. I'm at a loss. I'm more qualified to be the governor of Ohio than Vivek Ramaswamy. Why don't you run, Sean? Well, I can't. Little late. And I didn't rob people of millions of dollars with a fake Alzheimer's drug to then only dip out, sell the stock at a high cost to then, of course, have it fail, and then make any investors in said drug go bankrupt when the drug never worked for anything in the first place. That, of course, is why Vivek belongs in jail. This now, of course, brings me to a new segment of the show that I like to call Vivek the Ass.
Oh, Vivek the ass, Vivek the ass. Hee-haw, pure donkey class. Thinks he's the future, but he's stuck in the past. Vivek Ramaswamy, you magnificent ass. He'll cancel woke culture, then sell you a pill. Buy my book on freedom for $3.99. What a deal. Says government's broken, but wants the big chair still. Classic jackass move, pure ego overkill. Oh, Vivek the ass, Vivek the ass. Tail held high like he's first in his class. Debate him once and he'll kick up the grass. Vivek Ramaswamy, you glittering ass.
Okay, now as it turns out, Vivek is set to speak, I believe, at Miami University tonight, if I'm not mistaken, Tuesday evening. I will not be going. If I did, it would be, frankly, for sensational reasons, I guess. I would get up to the microphone. I would grill his ass about the COVID lie, why he went along with it, and what qualifies him to be the Ohio governor when there hasn't even been a primary, and he's done nothing for this state, let alone live in it. I mean, I would tear his ass to pieces. And the interesting part is the left in this country and the right, those who play that political paradigm, are so retarded that they actually believe that somebody criticizing him from the right would be foolish in some regard. But it isn't. It's quite the opposite. We can look at him with a 40,000-foot view and see him for the fraud that he is. Case in point, he apparently advocated at one point sometime recently for year-round school in Ohio. And this is from the centersquare.com, allegedly based out of Ohio here. Of course, it was, I'm sure, printed other places as well, but it says the following: Ohio Republican Governor candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is quickly backing away from an idea to send children to school year-round and extend the school day. Democratic gubernatorial candidate Amy Acton, she's a murderer, posted a clip of Ramaswamy's social media video which outlined ideas to reduce the cost of childcare, i.e. admitting that the school system is a daycare center, including sending students to school until 4 p.m. and keeping schools in session throughout the year. Ramaswamy later deleted the video, and a new version without the school plan was uploaded, according to the Daily Beast. Ramaswamy's campaign told the Center Square that they believed Acton is trying to create an issue. Well, here's the thing. Vivek Ramaswamy is a breathing issue. He's the problem. And so is Amy Acton, which means Ohio is screwed. It goes on here, quote, this was from his campaign, parents across Ohio are demanding a better education system for their children. And that is exactly who Vivek is listening to. A causal back and forth on TikTok is not a policy rollout. It's a conversation with voters, despite Democrats pretending otherwise. The campaign's Connie Luck told the Center Square, quote, they're trying to manufacture an issue because they know Amy Acton's education agenda amounts to the same failed policies that continue to let down our children. Vivek will keep listening to parents across the state and remains open to any option that gives our children a real chance at a better future. I'm going to wrap up this article, and then I'll get into whether or not he can actually do that legally. And as it turns out, as you might expect, he can't. It would be completely illegal. But illegality is his thing, and he's done it before, so, someone would have to stop him here. It says Republicans initially claimed that Acton, there we go. Her camp created the video using deepfake AI, but the campaign confirmed to the Columbus Dispatch that the video was real. In the video, Ramaswamy outlined plans to reduce costs for housing, energy, property taxes, healthcare, and childcare. Sorry, buddy, you can't do all of that, and that isn't going to happen. Not when you're putting in massive data centers all throughout Ohio, or you want to. He said, quote, I'm a dad. Make parenting more affordable by making school year round and going till 4 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock so you don't have to pay for childcare, Ramaswamy said in the original video. The video did not include any discussion of increased taxpayer costs for year-round schools or an extended school day. The school portion was edited out of the new video, unquote. Now, before I get into the actual, whatever you'd want to call it, public opinion logistics of any of this, let's just get into the illegality first. Again, you can ask the question to any AI system. You can certainly ask it to any search engine, and it'll pop back a legal answer. The answer, of course, is can he do this legally? And the answer is no. A governor cannot unilaterally make K-12 schooling year-round across the entire state. The power to set the school calendar, including whether it becomes year-round or stays traditional, almost always belongs to local school districts, not the governor or even the state legislature in most cases. Again, given this specific scenario, it gets very specific as to, again, what can happen and how it would actually get done. But just in summary, it says a governor alone cannot make K-12 schooling year-round statewide. The only practical routes are, number one, convince the legislature to pass a law taking the decision away from local districts, almost politically impossible outside Hawaii. Or two, use large, sustained financial carrots to get districts to switch voluntarily. It says in 2025, no state is anywhere close to a mandatory statewide year-round calendar. The mere suggestion is asinine. Now let's look at it again from just a basic logistics standpoint and in a public opinion standpoint. Do you actually believe that anybody in Ohio, let alone any state, would want year-round school for their children? You're talking no summer breaks. You're talking about, again, the occasional week-long break. You would just, again, have to fit it within the parameter of what is currently the 180-day schedule, so to speak, unless, of course, you extended that somehow. Again, it defies logic because it's illogical. It's completely illogical, unless he said it to basically, disrupt the entire business and flatten it financially, because that's exactly what would happen. I'd be okay with that. It would flatten the business. The number of students and parents that would pull their children out, rather, those individuals would flatten these schools overnight. Congratulations, everybody. We're going to year-round schooling. The students would lose their minds. They would instantly lose their minds. They would instantly start looking at alternatives and other schools to attend, in particular online schooling. That would still give them a level of freedom that they can't even taste right now because they've never even done it. But there's no way that this would ever happen. And the parents themselves wouldn't be able to stand it either, let alone, again, if they were whatever, single parents, married, both working or not. They wouldn't stand for such a thing either. So again, my problem with him is multifaceted, but he's an ass because he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's fine that he's talking to so-called Americans and that he's talking to Ohioans, so he says, and he's going into small bars in Cincinnati and talking with God knows who, about God knows what. And even again, going to Miami University and doing these speaking engagements. But I'm telling you, he isn't any different than Amy Acton on the COVID lie. He went along with it too, because pharmaceutical fraud is how he made his millions. He didn't make it honestly. I've said this before, and again, people are like, that's racist. Is it? It's well known that among Indians, fraud is basically in their DNA. His mother was fraudulent. He's fraudulent. That means it's in their DNA. Not doing things justly, working the system, taking advantage of people as you do it, and then again, attaining particular positions of influence, hiring your own kind, that is, giving them particular positions, and then doing what? Stomping on the hardworking people of a state. I'm with Casey Putsch on this 100%. Vivek Ramaswamy would be a nightmare for this state. He'd be a nightmare for any state. But it's either going to be him or Amy Acton unless one of them dies and somebody else decides to run. I cannot believe that Vivek Ramaswamy is the actual leading candidate in Ohio. I cannot believe it. It seems too fake to be real. J.D. Vance would be a far better governor. I'm certain of that. And of course, that would look all arranged as well, much like this looks arranged. But at least there's a little less fraud, a little less involved with a J.D. Vance. But honestly, this is it's alarming. I can't believe people are buying it. So the thing that I would like to see on film, if it's again available, and people actually do it. And again, I could go. I mean, the entire thing is free, but I have no inclination to go because I would yell. I would just get loud. And I mean, yeah, that has to happen. Somebody's got to do it. Part of me is like, well, might as well be me. But even so, he's got to get criticism from the right to snap people out of their trance who are on the right. Whatever, Sean, Vivek's MAGA. Is he? Is he? I think Vivek's in it for Vivek. I think once he becomes governor, he'll try to do something else politically, and we'll never be able to get rid of this guy. He's a con artist. Listen to the way that he talks. Again, he was one of the WEF Young Global Leaders. He got his money from somebody, whether it was Soros or somebody else, a long time ago. And now he's playing like he's a conservative. Sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Too much fraud from his past. He's just too slippery for my taste. So, yeah. Thus ends the most recent segment and new segment of this particular episode anyway, and I'm sure future episodes. Vivek the ass.
Vivek the ass, tail held high like he's first in his class. Debate him once and he'll kick up the grass. Vivek Ramaswamy, you glittering ass.
Okay, now, speaking of the COVID lie, among other lies, let me get into the jab-related news here. This is interesting. I find this fascinating. The more that I'm on either social media or any of the chat boards that I pay attention to, and even more videos being produced, the COVID lie is making a resurgence. And the information that existed 5 years ago on the COVID lie is continuously coming back. And it's like it's being recycled on purpose almost. And I certainly hope so to a great extent. I hope, again, that there's some accountability for the individuals. And there should be accountability for all of the individuals having to do with that entire scam. Not to mention, of course, the blood that's on their hands and a million other things. But first of all, let me mention this guy because I've played audio of him on the show in the past, and he was a former guest on Renette Sunham's foghornexpress.substack.com channel, and it has to do with Kevin Jenkins. Kevin Jenkins is a former board member of America's Frontline Doctors, and he's a black dude. And again, he seemed rather straightforward when, of course, communicating with Renette Sunham, but now he's found himself in court having to do with the finances of AFLDS. And we know, of course, that he wasn't the only one tied to the finances, that Simone Gold, Dr. Lawyer Simone Gold, ladies and gentlemen, that she too was directly tied to the finances. And let's just call a spade here. She was grifting, just like everybody else basically was grifting in this entire so-called movement. The Truth Freedom Doctor movement, or whatever the hell they wanted to call it. It was embarrassing and completely ridiculous. But with that said, Kevin Jenkins was on the stand in court being asked questions about whether or not he was in control of the finances. And apparently, even as he was looking at documentation under oath, testifying that he wasn't in charge of any of the finances with AFLDS, he in fact was in charge and certainly had access, rather, to a great deal of money. Now, whether he was in charge or not is anybody's guess, but he had access to it. He was cutting checks, he was moving money from one account to the next, so on and so forth. As all of that was happening, again, he was under oath, and he's now apparently been charged with perjury. And the judge in the case allegedly has told him that she would never charge anybody with perjury in the past, but it was just so blatant that apparently he was saying he had nothing to do with it, while looking at documentation in real time showing that he had something to do with it. If anybody believes, though, that Kevin Jenkins is the only one, they're fooling themselves. Dr. Simone Gold was directly involved in this also, and that's what was really exposed just a year or so, even 2 years after 2020, when the entire so-called freedom movement and all that other nonsense, medical freedom movement, started again churning its wheels and offering ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine to people. All of a sudden, that dried up, but they kept taking money. Simone Gold still owes me $80-some-odd. I haven't forgotten that. I remember I attempted to buy ivermectin online through their organization on one particular occasion. Of course, I attended their White Coat Summit, their second one, which was completely revealing to me regarding the entire fraud. If you've been listening that long, you remember that entire story. And that's, again, when I had Simone Gold pegged as a grifter from the word go. I was 12 inches from her face, and I was trying to talk with her, and she was ignoring me because I wasn't being handled by one of her handlers. And I tried to give her a copy of my book, my last book, outlining the entire COVID lie in American schools and the entire American school system. But again, she probably thinks COVID's real, or she's perpetuating the lie of COVID being real, to make money off of advocating for people to take supplements and other drugs and 1,000 other things. I mean, I'll fully admit, I got some of it wrong too, but that's when I stopped bending spoons and I went, wait a minute, there is no COVID. It doesn't exist. I'm not saying ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine aren't effective anti-inflammatory drugs. They most certainly are. Hell, ivermectin's great for poison ivy. I've openly proven it with my own experiment on my own body. It works. And I'm not saying that supplements are all that bad either. People need to be careful about them, of course, and be careful which ones they use and where they come from and the whole thing. Same thing with any of these other drugs. And of course, ivermectin's been proven to cure cancer, along with other drugs as well. But Kevin Jenkins isn't the only one that's going to get caught up in this. Too many people are wrapped up in that fraud. Too many people bought a lot of things that they didn't need to be buying with other people's money. So if she has a multi-million-dollar home in Naples, Florida, or wherever the hell she lives now, I own $80 of that house. And I want it back. It's that simple. But again, they're not going to, there were no refunds. Well, our supplier for ivermectin just disappeared. Well, so did my money. So did everybody's money. I'm one person who cut a check for 80 some odd bucks, 89 bucks, whatever the hell it was. Other people did too. I'm not the only one. My God. Anyway, we'll see how that rolls out in the future. There, of course, was this too. This happened here this past week. Vaccine stocks drop after FDA memo links COVID shots to child deaths. Yep. This is from Zero Hedge. Vaccine stocks slumped Monday after an explosive memo from the FDA vaccine chief Vinay Prasad, if I'm saying that right, surfaced late Friday, signaling the agency is preparing to roll out tough restrictions on new vaccines for children. Prasad described a profound revelation, quote unquote, linking COVID shots to at least 10 deaths in children. At least 10 deaths? That's putting it mildly. The number of children that are dead from the COVID shots is an incalculable number. And with that said, it doesn't mean that these companies, given this news and this revelation from the FDA and their memo, it doesn't mean that they're going to do away with COVID shots. Unfortunately, they're still around. They're still toying with them, which is an abomination. Here's a William Blair and Miles R. Minter. These are apparently some of the researchers affiliated with this, and it rates the mRNA market pro forma. It says the following, quote, "Our interpretation of the memo is that the CBER will focus its efforts on the younger 12 to 24-year-old male population for newly approved COVID-19 vaccines where the myocarditis risk is highest." Again, it's like saying you don't sweat much for a fat kid. They're telling these people it'll give you permanent heart damage and kill you, but we're going to hone in on just young males, young developing males. Remember, the COVID shots also destroy the testicles and the reproductive organs. Again, these people, I hope they all burn in hell. Every single one of them. Every single person who's affiliated with this and any of this research and those who were refusing to shut this down. It says if new regulatory restrictions were to be implemented in the higher myocarditis risk population, well, frankly, it's everybody. Analysts see further headwinds toward Moderna's declining COVID-19 franchise, alongside further negative sentiment that this memo is subsequent actions may generate. It says analyst says that Pfizer, BioNTech, Novavax, and Sanofi, whatever the hell, could also be impacted. Who cares? All these companies need to cease to exist. It says the memo also indicates several upcoming reforms to the CBER vaccine regulatory pathway, most notably the demand for pre-market randomized trials, assessing clinical endpoints, not just immunogenicity, for most new vaccine products. It oddly enough also goes on and basically says that people are going to have to prove that shots actually reduce or cure pneumonia, as opposed to just, pumping more pneumonia into a person when they take a shot. But again, pneumonia, that too is a lie, much like every other lie, whether it be flu or polio or what have you. It's all based on poisoning and a weakening of the central nervous system, which controls breathing, which that again is what pneumonia is. It's a weakened state of breathing. Well, what's gone on in the person's central nervous system to slow that? Is it aluminum? Is it other poison? Probably. It's copious amounts of drugs over, again, an extended period of time. And certainly in the immediate span of time if a person's taken a COVID shot. This is from Rasmussen at the end of the month here of November, which was interesting. Millions experienced COVID-19 vaccine side effects, it says. Again, they ran a giant poll on that. And again, I think millions is an understatement. It says the latest Rasmussen Report national telephone and online survey finds that 68% of American adults say they got a COVID-19 vaccination, and a majority, 60% of vaccinated adults reported no side effects from the vaccine. However, 26% said they had minor side effects, and 10% reported major side effects from the vaccine. Well, these are the ones that are still alive because they're alive to take the survey. What about the ones that are dead? Again, what about the ones who can't comprehend that COVID is the reason that they get sick every year? I don't mean COVID, of course, I mean the shots. That's weakened their immune system, weakened their DNA, and altered their DNA. Again, what about them? People's powers of rationalization are incredible. And they'd be like, well, it's wintertime, I have a cold again, so that's the way that is. Or again, they still go to the store, they buy a fake fraudulent COVID test, and they take it and they say, well, the stick says I have COVID, so I have COVID. There are people that believe that still too. It says based on a U.S. adult population of 558 million, this would mean that 63 million had at least some side effect from the COVID-19 vaccine, including more than 17 million who experienced major side effects. Again, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It says among all American adults, including those who didn't get vaccinated against COVID-19, 46% believe it is likely that side effects of COVID-19 vaccines have caused a significant number of unexplained deaths, down from 55%. Well, that's because 9% of them are dead. It actually goes on and says this, at least again, according to this so-called survey, it says 44% now don't think a significant number of deaths have been caused by vaccine side effects, including 20% who believe it's not at all likely. Another 12% are not sure. Well, again, if these individuals are taking the survey and they're injected, why would they want to admit that the shot that they took was actually killing people? Because then they'd have to look into the mirror, and they don't want to do that. They break this down by income then, which seems a bit strange, but they did it. 57% of Americans with annual incomes between $30,000 and $50,000 a year say it's likely that COVID-19 vaccines caused many deaths, compared to just 36% of those with an annual income over $200,000 who say the same. Well, it's an inevitability that it happened. We lived through it. We're still living through it. The headlines are all over the place. The people with endless illnesses, the people, again, with ALS, dementia, again, weakened immune systems, coughing constantly, brain fog, loss of taste, smell, hearing, eyesight. The symptoms are endless. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages of single-space symptoms. Blows me away. But yeah, I don't think a survey of this magnitude is necessarily going to provide the entire truth, because you've got to ask yourself, who specifically is the sample size? Who's actually taking the survey? And do they want to look in the mirror? Again, many don't. In fact, I'll end with this, and this is a very accurate meme. I've mentioned, of course, the lie of polio in the past and most of these so-called viruses. Again, that entire theory is used to deflect from the actual purposeful poisoning of people in the entire, of course, medical industry and the normalization of that, but throughout our nation's history and world history. Again, the medical industry in one country is theoretically the same as the next, certainly of developed countries, and here's what it says. It says, quote, when it's been renamed cerebral palsy, Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré syndrome, transverse myelitis, acute flaccid paralysis, spinal apoplexy, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, cholera, multiple sclerosis, and inhibitory palsy. This, of course, leads to what they're referring to as the polio swindle. It says the paralysis known as polio was being caused by industrial poison, so a virus theory was purposely fabricated by the chemical industry and the United States government to deflect away from litigation. The American Medical Association instructed each licensed medical doctor that they could no longer classify polio as polio, or their license to practice would be terminated. Sound familiar with the COVID lie? Same thing, same threat, same follow-through, same action. Any paralysis was now to be diagnosed as acute flaccid paralysis, quote unquote, MSMD, Bell's palsy, cerebral palsy, ALS, Guillain-Barré, among others. This was orchestrated purposefully to make the public believe polio was eradicated by the polio vaccine, but the polio vaccine contained toxic ingredients directly linked to paralysis. Polio cases, not identified as polio, were skyrocketing, but only in vaccinated areas. Salk's vaccine was a disaster which permanently paralyzed and killed many people, unquote. Hence the COVID lie. Again, same story, same cause, same application, same result. I'd like somebody to hit Vivek Ramaswamy with that fact. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.